Washington State has some amazing hiking trails. With beautiful vistas all around, it's no wonder so many people enjoy this great outdoor activity. Finding a perfect trail for you doesn't need to be a complicated thing. Find out why. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My Family of Four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. The Washington Trails Association is not only a great resource for hikers, but they are also incredible advocates for our public lands. Hiking means so much to so many. Finding solitude in the backcountry, overcoming challenges on the trails, to a simple walk amongst nature with your pup. The common thread amongst hikers is that it brings them joy. In today's world, it's even more important to find joy in even the simplest of activities. John Muir once wrote in his book Yosemite, "Everybody needs beauty as well as bread, places to play in and pray in, where nature may heal and give strength to body and soul alike." Joining us again on the show today is Anna Roth of Washington Trails Association, also simply known as the WTA. We chat about new trails in Washington State, their new app, how you can get more involved to protect our public lands, and she shares some insights on what you can expect this hiking season with some of the changes that the current federal administration is putting in place for our federal lands. I'm thrilled to have her back. Anna, thank you for coming on RV Out West.
Thanks so much, Brooks. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, thank you. So let me ask you this, let's maybe start off with what's kind of new and shaken down at the WTA.
Well, we have updated our app, WTA Trailblazer, which a lot of people find super useful, especially out on the road or out in the backcountry, because you can access information that's in your My Backpack account when you're offline if you use our app. And again, that's WTA Trailblazer. It's essentially the hiking guide and the trip reports. I think folks find that really useful. You just indicate that you find a hike, you want to add a hike to your backpack, and then later out in the field, you can access all the information that you need about it, including the 5 most recent trip reports. We've rolled out, it's probably been a couple of years, but we've had a couple of Northwest Exposure photo contests, and those are always awesome. We accept photos from anybody who recreates, from like local state park interpretive trails to like backcountry, big treks. And that photo contest usually runs from August to October every year. And we create a calendar out of the winners, and then we, sort of promote the winners all over after we announce them. But we had a really good crop of winners this year, and you can find them at Northwest Exposure. If you search Northwest Exposure on WTA's website, WTA.org.
So cool. I gotta ask, so are your trail maintenance volunteer crews kind of out getting to work and starting their work? Or is it too early in the season, still waiting on snowpack to melt?
We actually work year round. So yes, we've got crews out in the field. And actually, typically at this time of year, we would be going out onto Forest Service land, but we're still kind of waiting to find out what's going on with the Forest Service firings that happened recently and what that means for personnel at the agencies. A lot of people think, volunteers just kind of go out and do the trail work, but we really need the agency staff there to help us guide the projects, to give us permission to do the work, because you do have to have permission to do the trail maintenance that's planned on national and state lands. We're building new trails in Everett, and folks can keep up with what we've been doing. If you check on Thursdays on our social media, we post hiker headlines, which is kind of the news of the week. And we just posted one that included some information about a trail that we're opening in Everett called Loganberry Lane, still under construction, but not quite there yet. And some other really cool work that we did down in the gorge.
Well, my next question is, are you aware of any new trails or hiking destinations? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
It's real short. It's definitely it's a newer in-town trail.
Okay.
And the goal is really to increase access to local green spaces. So working with the city of Everett to build a trail kind of in South Everett. It's through a kind of wetland area. And so the project has been really fun. A lot of people have been enjoying building this big puncheon bridge that goes over the swamp area to keep hikers out of the swamp and keep the animals that live there healthy. And there are two really developed parks that it's near, but the trail feels very remote. So a lot of people kind of feel like they're far from home when in fact they're in a neighborhood.
That's very cool. Are there any other new trails or new destinations that are maybe not urban, but maybe more, I don't know, out in the Cascades or somewhere that you guys have been developing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that since I last talked to you, we opened Frog Mountain on Highway 2. So that's kind of on the north side of Highway 2 back off the Beckler River Road. And that's like a new trail that we built with some support from the Backcountry Horsemen of Washington. It's gorgeous. People really, really loved that trail. And it is still under snow, but definitely save it in your backpack for the summer.
What is the length of that trail?
Let's see. I'll be transparent. It's been a little bit since I've been
That's
up
okay.
there.
Yep, fair
Look
enough.
it up. And you can do that on WTA.org. So it's 8 miles round trip.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's moderate. It's 2,200 feet of elevation gain. And of course, remember that means it's 2,200 feet over 4 miles because you got to hike 4 miles back.
Right, right, right. Let's talk about trails that you are excited about going out to hike and explore this kind of spring, summer. What do you got your sights
Oh
set on?
man, that's a great question. Well, I'll be honest, I haven't thought very far in advance for that. I am a little bit I tend to check the conditions before, maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before, and I take a scan of the state and see where's good and then kind of build my dream trip from there. But I do like to visit Central Washington or even, out in the Tri-Cities in the spring. One of my favorite spots is Steamboat Rock State Park.
Yeah.
It's just so dramatic, and especially in the spring, it's really just breathtaking. The buttes around the Banks Lake are so tall and striking, and Steamboat Rock itself is really incredible, right off of from a really developed campground. That's kind of nice. And then there is a trail that gets to the top of the rock. It's pretty rugged. It's not really, I think, a formal trail, or if it is, it's been adopted and not really optimized for for hikers. So it's kind of a scramble to get to the top,
Yeah.
but it is really, really gorgeous.
Then the antithesis of that is one is kind of, would you say, is one underrated trail, in your opinion, that more people should go hike
Oh,
and
great
why?
question too. You're
See,
crushing
I'm
it. You're
crushing
doing
it on the
great.
questions.
You know, I your listeners might not like this question, but I really think that local parks are underrated. I think every time I visit a local park and every time I hear other people say they visited a local park, they almost always say, It's so great. And it was so close, and I just never knew. So for me, that would be like Frank Park in Seattle. It's this beautiful little park that heads down towards Lake Washington, kind of close to where I live, not really close. It's a little challenging to access. It's just right off a road, marked with a sign, but there's nowhere to park, so you do have to do it on foot. But it is glorious. It is so great and it's so cool. And I found it in 2020 when I was doing my like city walking around during lockdown, and I visit every year. I feel that way about my hometown when I go see my parents. I, go find trails nearby using our Hikes Near Me feature in our app, WTA Trailblazer. And almost every time I think, this is great. This is such a cool little spot. I really rely on the app and that Hikes Near Me feature if I'm traveling because it helps me find those locations that, I might not have thought about or read about in like a top 10 list.
Okay. If you were going to suggest to a new hiker where they should start, what advice do you have for them?
That is such a good question. I really would suggest that brand new hikers start at WTA.org. We have a Trail Smarts page and essentially a hiking 101 page that gives you all the basics. We tell you what the 10 essentials are. We have an adapted 10 essentials list that's really more for day hiking. Like, if you're traveling in your camper and you're at a campsite and you want to do a day hike, but you're not going to get too far away, like maybe you're going to come back for lunch, so you can adapt your what you really need. You can adapt what you can carry. And that's that day hike packing list that I mentioned. We've got other information like how to avoid blisters. We've got information on, of course, the hiking guide with the length, elevation gain, and high points of any hike in Washington that you could want to do, plus thousands of other ones that you might not have heard of. And we also have our hike recommender, which is part of your account when you make one on WTA.org. After you start saving hikes and writing trip reports, our recommender will evaluate what you have hiked and what you've trip reported on, and it will recommend other hikes like what you have done.
That is very cool. And is there any cost associated with signing up to
Nope,
get a
not at
backpacker
all.
account?
We are a nonprofit, so of course, if you see value in what you are utilizing, we ask that people donate, but there's no cost required to make an account.
Well, I would like to talk about some of the passes. I just was reading that for the first time since the state rolled out the Discover Pass, believe it's been 14 years since we've had the Discover Pass. They are looking at potentially doing their first rate increase on that pass this year. So, if somebody is a new hiker, or maybe they're a seasoned hiker, what kind of is the difference between the Discover Pass and the Forest Service Pass? When do I need what and why, and how does this all work?
So the easiest way to know what you need for any given hike is to check on WTA.org. We include that information just below the photo on the hike page. A lot of people ask me, can I just get one pass? And the answer is that if you want to just be able to hike wherever in Washington, unfortunately, there isn't a pass that applies everywhere. And that's because we have both national and state and then local county city lands in Washington. But for most hikers, it's the national and the state lands that's the distinction. For hikers on a more like literally on the ground level, the Discover Pass applies to state lands, which would include locations like Mailbox Peak or Mount Si in the Puget Sound area, Mount Spokane State Park in the Spokane area. Up in Bellingham, you would be looking at something like Fragrance Lake in Larrabee State Park. And down in the gorge, you'd be thinking about something like Beacon Rock State Park. Again, to just so you know for sure, for any specific hike, you can look online, but that's kind of what the Discover Pass applies to, is those state lands. The other pass that you'll see a lot of times is the Northwest Forest Pass, and those apply to national forest lands in both Washington and Oregon, pretty commonly required at national forest trailheads all over Washington. My best advice that I give people is if you have the funds available to you, you should get a Discover Pass so that your state lands are covered. And then you should get an interagency pass, which the last time I checked was $80. It might be a little bit more now. But that gives you access to both national forest lands and national parks.
Let's take a brief break here and hear a word from our friends over at CamperAlerts.com. The seasons may have changed, but that doesn't make it any easier to find available campsites. Now, you can get notified of sold-out campsites when they become available with Camper Alerts. Choose your campground, pick your RV-specific filters, and set an alert. It's that simple. Visit CamperAlerts.com today and start setting your alerts. Let's get into a topic that I think's been on a lot of people's minds lately with this whole reduction in federal employees that's kind of happening with this current administration. Specifically, let's talk about kind of what it's going to mean for regards to our public lands. My biggest question is, from a WTA perspective, what are your thoughts on what this impact will be to hiking trails and access to other public lands that people should be considering and be prepared for this upcoming spring, summer hiking season? And then obviously, who knows past that, but let's just look at what it might mean for spring, summer, since it's really happening right now.
Yeah, this is really good for folks to be thinking about. So I'm glad that you're opening this conversation. It has been really chaotic and uncertain in the last couple of weeks in terms of like who's working for the Forest Service, who's working for the Park Service. At any given day, it's a reduction in staff or it's firings. WTA is doing our best to keep up with this, and we have a really knowledgeable advocacy department that's kind of keeping track of this. And our advice to hikers right now is really expect that maintenance, especially in backcountry areas or like those less popular, less well-known areas, is probably going to be delayed if it happens at all. And so it's really important to check WTA.org for trip reports from the area that you're going. And if you go to write your own report, because, WTA is a hugely popular website. We have 5.5 million visitors a year, and we'll probably have more this year because people really know us for our trip reports. Those are conditions reports that are written by hikers just like you. You don't have to have any qualifications. You just need to be a hiker with a camera, ideally, so you can share your photos and let us know, like, what did you see on trail? Were there trees down? Was it totally clear? How was the parking lot? Are there toilets at the parking lot? That kind of information has always been useful, but this year especially because we anticipate not having as much support in the maintenance kind of department. That's kind of going to be the on the ground impact on hikers, is whether or not the trails are clear in the spring and summer. Obviously, in the long term, we really want the Forest Service and the Park Service to be fully funded and staffed. We have always had that line. We have always operated on assumption that a fully funded National Park Service and National Forest Service will benefit recreators. And so we're doing our best to help, and we're doing our best to encourage hikers to hike responsibly. So in addition to checking trip reports and writing trip reports, maybe hike with a little extra caution this year. There won't be as many people available to respond to emergencies. Obviously, search and rescue is going to do their best to try and keep up, but just try and be as careful as you can, because there will be far fewer people on the ground for the agencies to be able to respond.
I didn't even think of that at all. You're right. I was more worried about like maintenance and public land closures per se, but I didn't even think about with search and rescue and the impact that that could have.
Like I said, we're encouraging hikers to hike safe, and that doesn't just mean like, don't hike riskily, but if you have a fire, put it all the way out, dead out, cold out. Personally, I don't have campfires because I'm too nervous about it. I've got enough nice gear that I'm very lucky to have that will keep me warm, and the fire just stresses me out too much. So I recommend, be really circumspect about whether or not you have a fire this year in your campsite or on your backpacking trip. All the rules still apply. It's just be extra vigilant this year.
So, Anna, I've heard a bit about this hiker rally day.
So we were just in Olympia for Hiker Rally Day. It was March 18th. We had hundreds of hikers show up for just to speak up for public lands and the importance of public lands to Washington and Washingtonians. It is a biannual, so every 2 years event that WTA facilitates, and it was very cool to see so many people so passionate about ensuring that there's funding available for trails in Washington. The rest of the time that we're not doing Hiker Rally Day, the rest of the year, we've got this really robust advocacy department and a very engaged group of people who's kind of our Trail Action Network. You can join that at WTA.org. It's essentially an email list that we send out action alerts when we need hikers to kind of speak up on various issues. We utilize the Trail Action Network, I would say, an appropriate amount. No, that's sorry. I'm trying to say we won't spam you, basically. We try and keep our hiker issue emails pretty limited. You're not going to get a ton of emails if you sign up for this list, but it's a really great way to show lawmakers both at the state and federal level, because the Trail Action Network stuff goes to everybody, how important it is to Washington and Washington's hikers that we have a really robust trail system that's fully invested. We saw starting in 2019, I believe they passed the Great American Outdoors Act, and that 5 years of investment that passed really made a huge difference. We were able to do all these incredible projects that had been deferred. There was a ton of work on the I-90 corridor on all these really popular trails like Snow Lake. We worked on Franklin Falls, Denny Creek. We did a huge partnership with Mountains to Sound Greenway to kind of expand the impact of the funding that we got. So when the money is available, we get a lot of work done. And that money was available partially because of continued hiker engagement and continuing to remind lawmakers, like, we care, we care, we care. We want you to invest in Washington's trails. Anytime there's an action that we need hikers to take, is it, telling your local lawmaker that you want a specific piece of funding to pass for a trail to exist? Is it telling your local lawmaker that it's very important to invest in roads to trailheads, because of course, if you can't drive to the trailhead, you can't hike in many cases. Yeah, when you sign up for WTA, there are two emails that you can opt out of if you'd like to. I recommend, of course, that you stay opted in. One of them is the Trail Action Network, so you can sign up on WTA and just get that right away. The other email is Trail News, and that's a monthly newsletter with hikes and recommendations for locations to visit. It's awesome. People love it. I really recommend people keep it. So sign up at WTA.org, and you can, if you'd like to, you can opt out of those two things, but I recommend everybody stay opted in
And then, I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of this already, but if for some reason, let's end with, where can people learn more about the Washington Trails Association?
You can go straight to WTA.org, browse around. You can check out our Trail Smarts section. That's really the one that I like to point new people or people who maybe are new to hiking to, because we've got so many how-tos. We've got how-tos for stuff you didn't even know you needed a how-to for. If you are just looking for somewhere to hike, if you're a pretty seasoned hiker and you already kind of like know what you like and just want to be able to have all your hiking information in one place, WTA.org, sign up and make an account, and then just start saving hikes in our hiking guide. You can look at our hiking guide or our Hike Finder map, and you can just save those hikes to My Backpack. You'll be able to build the list of hikes you've done and the hikes that you want to do, and that'll get you the recommender started on giving you new locations that you may not have heard of.
Wonderful. And how about on socials? If people want to follow along and join in on the conversation.
We are at Instagram and Facebook and Threads at Washington Trails.
Well, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us here and to talk to us. It has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, Brooks. This has been really great.
Thank you again for listening to RV Out West. I sincerely appreciate it. If you like this episode, please share it with your family and friends. I'd also like to invite you to follow RV Out West on Instagram and Facebook, where you can join in on the conversation. Next week, we do a really deep dive into road trip snacks. In fact, we consult with Jackson, who is the curator of the world's largest limited edition snack museum. The Snackin' Shack is a mighty museum dedicated to all things snacks. It's an amazing conversation, and you will not want to miss it next Monday. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.